We all know that the Chicago Bulls are heading into one of the most important offseasons in years. A top 10 pick, tons of cap flexibility, all the type of stuff there. A head coach that could be leaving. Rumors that the front office could be undergoing changes. But the thing that most people are still all coming back to is, will AK still be the one running the show, and how that makes them feel about this potential reset for the Chicago Bulls. On today's episode, we're going to talk about more stuff that's popped up that could be signs that Billy Donovan is moving on to UNC. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to talk about Patrick Williams being listed as the Bulls' best trade target. Who could the Bulls actually trade this offseason? And Portland is taking care of business. But does that mean the Bulls are going to get their pick? All that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And by the way, I was over on Locked On Tar Heels. If you guys want to talk about that, we're talking about the Billy Donovan situation and the potential of him going to UNC, of course, which is one of the biggest news around the Bulls and kind of things. Kind of died down with the Jaden Ivey stuff going on here. But ESPN recently came out with some things on it. Dan Wetzel of ESPN wrote some things in regards to what could be signs that Billy Donovan could be going there, one things that could be some hurdles with going there. Let's start off with the hurdle. Dan Wetzel wrote this. Chicago Bulls coach Billy Donovan's name has been floated, but even if he wanted to leave the NBA, there's little chance he would do so before the end of the season on April 12th. That makes his timing portal-wise at least even worse. This is something that I hadn't talked about or even really thought about, to be honest with you. I don't cover college basketball deeply enough, right? I watch it. I don't cover it deeply enough to kind of understand how the transfer portal and stuff works with hiring your head coach and when you kind of want that coach in there. And so while, that's only 9 days away, where the Chicago Bulls season ends in 9 days. But if that is an important 9 days that could limit some activity in the transfer portal, the question then becomes about, like, would the North Carolina be willing to move on without it? Now, as we know in college basketball now, you have GMs, right, that handle the NIL money and the things like that. So a head coach doesn't have to worry about that. And, you would like to think that UNC's GM would be able to handle some of that if need be, right? But it is does raise a question in that, right? Is that, would that limit it, right? And I'm of two brains of it with this, right? And anybody who's kind of more engulfed and ingrained in the inner workings of college basketball, please leave comments in the comment section down below. But if UNC looks at Billy Donovan and his legacy in college basketball, what he's able to do as a college coach, and they want that, I think that they would make caveats and plan for that, because they understand Billy Donovan was in the middle of an NBA season. He can't just leave the NBA season. His track record in the NCAA, it speaks for himself, right? He's 60 years old. He had at least 20 wins in 15 of his last 16 years in Florida. And that's just something you can't overlook, the success that he had there. Say what you will about Billy Donovan as an NBA head coach and where some of the limitations lie, but all of Billy Donovan's best strengths actually work in college basketball, right? Even his ability to adapt the system, change the system, those type of things help him in college basketball, right? All that type of stuff is there. So I don't know if just that transfer portal window in 9 days, like, are they going to make a coaching hire in 9 days? I doubt it. And even if they were, does that coaching hire bring the same kind of respectability that Billy Donovan would bring to that job? Not, it's UNC. I mean, they're going to have respectability regardless, right? So it's just something to think about. Luckily, they don't have to worry about the Bulls going on a playoff run. Like, that may be something. If the Bulls were a legit playoff team and they had to wait till the playoffs finished or something like that, then maybe they'd be like, oh, we just really can't wait. Unfortunately, we love Billy. But then let's go to the flip side of this, right? There have been some things now as well. We talked about something that could hold Billy Donovan back. There's some reasons now to believe that Billy Donovan could actually go. Reportedly, Billy Donovan is always, this one comes from Sport Illustrated's Pat Forte, that talked about All the Buzz, said this: I don't think it would be a problem for Billy Donovan, and that I think he would be great hire. I heard back when he was in Florida, he was in the NBA, the only other job that would interest him, that would kind of light the candle in his eyes, would be Carolina, because he realized what kind of job that is. He's a great coach. I think he would walk in and immediately be a very top as an X's and O's coach, and you can figure out the rest of it. So, that's something that we don't know, right? And this is speculation by the side of Sports Illustrated. So I want to make it clear there. This isn't something that we know for a fact or that I have been able to find that Billy Donovan has said on record, right? But if Billy has always kind of coveted the UNC job and is already doubting his place with the Chicago Bulls, doubting and that relationship with Arturas Karnisovas, doubting the path that the team is on, and your dream job pops up on top of all of that, if this is to be believed, and I'm just throwing out an if because, again, I haven't heard it come out of Billy Donovan's mouth. I mean no shot to the writers, either the ESPN writer or the Sports Illustrated writer, but you have to take everything with a grain of salt, right? But if this is to be believed, if this is facts, and Billy Donovan has always coveted the UNC job and always looked at that as a job that he would love to take, it could be the perfect storm of events that lead Billy Donovan out of here. And, that's just the reality of it. This isn't about blaming Billy Donovan for everything. This isn't even really about the Bulls job itself. I'm making this very little about the Chicago Bulls and more about where Billy's desires may lie, right? And if already going back to college interests him, or if already taking a step back from the Bulls was already something on his mind, and your dream job pops up at the same that may be something that it's too many things aligning for Billy Donovan even to look at and say, how am I going to pass this up? And if that's the position that you're put in, you got to do what's best for you. And so, best off for Billy Donovan. Whatever happens, whatever my issues have been with Billy Donovan as an X's and O's coach, and best believe they have been here. I've had my issues with him as an X's and O's coach. The reality of it is, like, this situation in Chicago is not ideal for anybody, right? Hell, it's not ideal for fans. And I'm sure that it's frustrating for somebody like Billy Donovan that came in here and, already left the situation in OKC where, didn't really want to wait for that team to compete, came over here to Chicago, a team that was bad. AK tried to did put a playoff roster together after that first year. We were in the playoffs that second year, but then it's all been downhill from that. Some of that is on Billy Donovan. A lot of that is on Arturas Karnisovas, and the roster that we've had here. And so, at the end of the day, the thing that I look at with this Billy Donovan situation personally, my own personal thought process on it is that if Billy wants to go, then let Billy go. It just is what it is. It may be time to allow that to happen. And if it is, you just got to embrace it. You got to move on. And you just got to, it is what it is. That's the thing. It is what the hell it is. And a lot of that is out of our control. So the reality of it is we just got to deal with it. And if Billy Donovan decides to move on and leave, Billy Donovan decides to move on and leave. If he stays here and Arturas is the one to leave, or change in GM, or they're able to just kind of in there, because I think the part that not a lot of people are talking about too, there is reconciliation that's available here too, right? And that is a path there that when AK and Billy Donovan, two people who for the majority of their time here, we heard that their collaborative relationship is what was the backbone of that relationship. There's a complete way in which they have their end of season meeting. Billy and AK talk, and AK sells Billy on, hey, listen, I know you haven't had the best rosters. We're going to go out here, got a top 10 pick. We'll get you the guard or whatever that you need. We'll be aggressive. And then in the offseason, we going to cook, and we feel confident we can get you the roster that you need to compete, and we're going to allow you to do your coaching, and we're going to get the hell out of your way. There's a world in which maybe that does happen. And let's say that rather than Billy Donovan or AK leaves, let's say that the Bulls do fire Mark Eversley and bring in a GM who does bring some fresh eyes and can be the in-between. So I'm not saying that it's likely. I'm not even saying that that's what Bulls fans should want. I'm just saying that we can't count out the other side of it too, that there may be some reconciliation that happens here, and then they're able to go forth and then be on the same page. So we'll see what ends up happening in that one. But moving on from that, the thing that I've been talking about a lot lately is the regret area. I've been talking a lot about that. That was the title of yesterday's episode. The Bulls fans are in regret era, right? Now, yesterday I was more so talking about the regret of the front office to not understand the assets that they had and not maximize on the value back, right? It wasn't about keeping Kobe White or keeping Ayo Dosunmu necessarily, but it was about the fact that you didn't recognize what you were giving up in them, and you got no actual future asset back unless Colin Sexton resigns and Leonard Miller, this run is legit for him, right? But one thing that Bulls fans regrets is, and even some Bulls content creators that I see, is this cap on the Ousmane Deng thing, right? And I have to address it on the pod. I'm sorry, I have to address it, right? So Ousmane Deng exploded for 36 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists in a game for the Milwaukee Bucks. And I knew the moment that game happened, and it also coincided with one of Leonard Miller's worst games, right? And that people were going to look at the Ousmane Deng thing and it was going to turn into what it turned into. But we're gonna separate the cap from the reality in this one, right? Now, people have talked about the Bulls not keeping Ousmane Deng, a toolsy forward, has some size, has some legit range, those type of things, and they're saying that the Bulls blew it. They ended up flipping Ousmane Deng for Nick Richards, and when it came down to that one, and and a lot of people think, all right, cool, that Nick Richards isn't part of the long-term plans, Ousmane Deng is. I want to first talk about the performance of Ousmane Deng, because I think people are, especially people who aren't really watching game to game and are thinking, over the last 11 games, Ousmane Deng is averaging 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3.9 assists in 29 minutes played. He's shooting 45% from the field and 34% from three-point range. Averaging also a steal per game, not a block per game. Solid production. Those are really solid numbers, right? Not bad. But then when you start realizing how many of those games were built, or how many of those numbers were inflated by that 36-point game. Let's take the 36-point game out of the equation here, right? I want to do that because I just want to look at it. So we're taking that 36-point game out of the equation and just looking at what Ousmane Deng did the 10 games prior to that. He was averaging 10 points, 4.5 rebounds on 45%, 40% from three, 1 steal per game, which is decent numbers, right? Now let's look at Leonard Miller. Over that same stretch, 13 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 52% from the field, 31% from three. He's not a great three-point shooter. We all know that. Averaging a half a steal and a half a block per game as well. But then let's look at the impact of it, right? Because I think it's easy to look at the counting stats. Let's look above the counting stats and let's dig into the weeds of the actual stats, right? Or the actual impact. When Ousmane Deng has been on the court this season, the Milwaukee Bucks, despite having no other good players on the team, he's -10. They're negative 10-point differential, and they score 6 points worse per 100 possessions when he's on the court. Also, his defense. Opponents that Ousmane Deng guards is shooting the ball 4% better than their season averages when Ousmane Deng is guarding them. And oh, by the way, the Milwaukee Bucks defense is almost 5 points worse per 100 possessions when Ousmane Deng is on the court. Leonard Miller, on the other hand of that, in his 372 minutes that he's played for the Chicago Bulls, right, which is a little bit less. Ousmane Deng's played 554 for the Milwaukee Bucks, so just to keep it even. But in those 372 minutes, Leonard Miller is plus 50. The Bulls are plus 15.6 points better when Leonard Miller is on the court. Oh, and by the way, we are 13.5 points better per 100 possessions when Ousmane Deng is on the court. And, oh, by the way, Ousmane Deng, really good defender. Players that he's guarding are shooting the ball 3% worse when he's guarding them, and opposing teams are scoring almost 3 points worse per 100 possessions when Leonard Miller's on the court. The fact of the matter is, right, and I know people are going to say, and I'll respond to all of this, but the fact of the matter is the Bulls saw two very similar prospects in Leonard Miller and Ousmane Deng. Keep in mind, you cannot eliminate this from it. Noah Essengate is also part of the Bulls' future. Both guys are 6'10", with Leonard Miller 6'10", and both 22 years old. And so they had two very similar prospects. You had to bet on one because the prospect of you playing both of them, because right or wrong, which it's wrong, Patrick Williams was still going to be getting minutes on this team, right? Noah Essengate is coming next season. Oh, by the way, Ousmane Deng is a restricted free agent at the end of the year, which you would have put yourself right back in another situation that you had to make a decision to extend a player before really getting to see them meaningful minutes. Leonard Miller has one more year left on his contract as well of team-controlled money. So then again, you don't have to yet worry about – you get to see a whole nother season of him before you pay him, before making a decision on extending him long-term. And so when people try to paint this as, oh, well, the Bulls weren't really thinking, they had no plan. No, I could see the plan here. And again, this is not to try to save the Chicago Bulls front office face. They suck, and they have made a series of terrible decisions, and every decision that they make deserves to be scrutinized, because why the hell would you have faith that they were making the right decision? But this one, when you look at it in the weeds, in the reality, not the thing where people are just like, well, you could have kept both of them. Okay, well, how do you play both of them? Because it wasn't going to happen. You weren't going to play both of them. You probably weren't going to do that. And then even with that said, and let's talk reality here, the Bulls would have probably invested in the guy anyway that has longer cost control money and not have to worry about a hot stretch. Now you got to go in restricted free agency and try to pay them before you really got to see them play meaningful minutes. And oh, by the way, as well, Leonard Miller has actually looked good with Bulls future pieces in Modest Buzelis and Josh Giddey. Whereas Ousmane Deng, his best games come when almost nobody on the Milwaukee Bucks is playing and most of that team is dead, and definitely not when Giannis is on the court. So I I could see why Leonard Miller was the better investment, is all I'm saying there, right? Ousmane Dieng hasn't been completely terrible, but he hasn't been great. And guess what? He hasn't been better than Leonard Miller. So while every Bulls fan, and especially the negative naysayers, are focusing so much on just trying to say, like, I get it. This team is in a negative spot. But the thing that I hate the most is when people feel like that because the team is in a negative spot, it means that every negative thing that they have to say or every negative feeling there somehow gains validity without looking at the context of it. And I think that there's the devil's in the details. In the details of this, just when you start looking at it, you can see why they were always, even if both of them were on the roster, Leonard Miller would probably be the one that would have gotten the investment again. We can talk about should they play P. Will or not. The fact of the matter is they're going to still play P. Will, right? And that was going to be a thing one way or another. And so you weren't going to have time to evaluate both of these guys, and the Bulls bet right. So I'm fine with the conversation being had around Ousmane Deng and things like that, but let's have it in reality. People like to have it as is Usman versus Nick Richards. Usman and Nick Richards don't play the same position, even though they were traded for each other. The real thing is looking at Usman versus Leonard Miller. That's the thing that you have to look at. Not Usman versus Nick Richards. It's Usman versus Leonard Miller, because those are the guys who would have been competing for the minutes and competing for the similar role. And guess who's played better? It's been Leonard Miller. So that's just my thought. That's my 2 cents on it. I'd love to hear from you guys on it. But, this regret era thing that we're in, we're going to keep talking about it because there's a lot of things that are popping up with the regret era, and I think that we need to talk about, right? But, at the end of the day, I think that it's a bunch of emotional reactions from Bulls fans that are upset, rightfully so. And that's why I try to always give, grace in that sense. Every Bulls fan and their critiques and their frustration with this team are all valid, right? And it's not to take away from the validity of that frustration, but I think it's the devil's in the details, and the complexity of the situation needs to be talked about as much as the top-down view over the thing that's going to get the headlines. That's just my thought process. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. And let me know this down below. When you think about it going forward, because the Bulls were unlikely to keep it, I think this is a good part to have the conversation on. Who would you rather invest in the future in? As it stands right now, Ousmane Deng or Leonard Miller? If you had both these guys as an option for the Chicago Bulls and you had to pick somebody's future to invest in, whose future would that be? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. With that said, Bleacher Report listed Patrick Williams as the Chicago Bulls' most likely trade candidate. And this is where I start getting into, I get it, right? Patrick Williams has had no development, right? He has 3 years, $54 million left on that contract, right? Who would take Patrick Williams as a stand right now? That's the question that I think people have to look at. And in the reality of it and where we are, nobody's taking Patrick Williams' contract at 3 years, $54 million. This is a guy that has averaged almost 20 minutes over the last stretch and is giving you 5.3 points per game in that, right? It's not like he doesn't have the opportunity. Patrick Williams is cooked. And the disappointing part about it is that it came at a season and a time where the Bulls didn't even have to. They didn't have to give Patrick Williams that contract, or at least not the full years that they gave Patrick Williams that contract on. Now, this is another blunder by the front office, and it's one that continues to grow. Again, regret era, because what we're seeing from Patrick Williams is a player that it's just, he's done. Patrick Williams is absolutely cooked, and that's just the reality of it. He is cooked. He's done. Over the last 10 games, Patrick Williams is averaging 4.6 points per game, 2.6 rebounds, in 20 minutes per game, shooting the ball 18% from three and 25% from the field. Patrick Williams is done. He's cooked, right? And this was a natural segment because, again, Patrick Williams is one of those guys that would have been playing, even if we had kept Ousmane Deng and Leonard Miller, Patrick Williams would have been playing above one of those guys, and one of those guys would be left playing on the end, sitting on the end of the bench rotten. Because what the hell is P. Will, man? And so seeing Bleacher Report listing P. Will as the most likely trade candidate, I get why the Bulls want to move off of him. It's clear. It's $19 million of wasted money and wasted potential. That's sitting there. That's a reminder every day of the failure of this front office. That's what Patrick Williams is. That's what he's always been. And that's what he's going to continue to be, right? And we continue to see that from P. Will. The thing that comes about it now with this P. Will situation is, what the hell are the Bulls going to do about it? And the reality of it is probably nothing. They're going to have to sit there, take their medicine, deal with it, and hope that you upgrade your roster in enough that you don't have to play P. Will. That's really all you can do with that one. And even the thing of playing P. Will so that he can try to pop off or gain his trade value, that's not working. 20 minutes per game, 25% shooting from the field, nobody is touching that. P. Will is done. He's cooked. And I'm sick and tired of seeing him in my team's jersey because P. Will is absolute garbage, and it's just a reminder of everything that we wasted with the last top 5 pick that we had for this team. P. Will is a perfect representation of every failure that AK has ever had. And that is the frustrating part of that. And that's the part that is so damn confusing in all of this, right? But, P. Will is trash, and now let's let them move on from P. Will. But last topic of the day before we get out of here, Tank Watch. We've been doing this. We'll talk about it more heavily, on Sundays is where we get into the Tank Watch bag. But the Portland Trailblazers have probably won 8 out of the last 10 games. And they now hold a half-game advantage over the Los Angeles Clippers for the 8 seed. But their probability of keeping on to that is going to be tough. The Portland Trailblazers have the 8th toughest record remaining in the NBA over the last week or so of the game. They have games against the Spurs, the Denver Nuggets, the Los Angeles Clippers, which is really going to be important. Their only easy opponent is against the Sacramento Kings. Of their 4 games, 3 of those teams are all playoff teams. Now, the one hope that they can run into is that some of those teams start resting their guys. It'll be the last week of the season. So maybe there's some hope that those teams are going to rest some of their guys because a lot of those teams have their things already locked in, right? Especially the Spurs. Now, the Spurs could still be trying to make a push here towards the end to try to get the 1 seed in the West, but Spurs basically have everything locked in, right? So if the Spurs kind of pack it in, the Clippers are going to, because of the battle over the 8 seed and the importance of the 8 seed, like I've been telling you guys, the importance of the 8 seed is you have 2 opportunities to win 1 game. You have 2 opportunities to win 1 game in the play-in. That could be. So the Clippers are going to put all their chips in when they take on the Portland Trailblazers, and that's going to be a really important matchup for that team, right? But now when you look at the Lakers, Luka having a hamstring injury, we'll see what happens with that one. They're probably going to be resting him as well. Teams in the West could be looking at that as an opportunity maybe to try to move up, right, and see if they can take that spot from them. But the Portland Trailblazers, a 40-win team. 1 win more is going to get them 41 wins, get them at 500. They take on the Denver Nuggets on Monday. They do not have another game until April 6th on Monday. And then they take on the Clippers in the second and last game on April 10th, right? So depending on what the Nuggets, which the Nuggets are still fighting for position, the Nuggets are probably going to play their guys there, right? The Nuggets right now have the 4th seed. They have a chance with the Los Angeles Lakers and the Luka Doncic injury to move up to the 3 seed. So they're probably going to play their guys. The question then becomes about the Spurs, who will probably have either depending on what the Thunder and them do, they'll probably have know exactly they're gonna be at that point. So the Spurs may sit their guys, right? It just depends, man. I mean, it's gonna be really interesting. If you are tired of watching Bulls basketball, watch some Portland Trailblazers basketball over the last week of the season because they have set themselves up with a half-game lead over the 8 seed, 4 games left. If they can win 2 out of these last 4 games, they put themselves in a really good position. But they have a tough schedule. We'll see if they're able to do it. But, we'll review it even more as the season goes on. But let me know you guys' thoughts on all of that down below. But that's going to do it for today's episode, man. This is the offseason where stuff is going to get real. Coach might leave. We'll see what happens with that one. A front office that has really 0 room for error this offseason. So what I'm going to throw to you guys is this one. Do you think that this is Billy Donovan's last season coaching the Chicago Bulls? And then on top of it, how do you feel about the regret era? How do you feel about the Ousmane Deng versus Leonard Miller conversation? Sound off down below in the comments. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell always. You guys can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.